Not going to run it long because I don't want the engine to lock up. Too hard to get those torque converter bolts loose. So, she's got a knot. How many miles? 241,000. So we're gonna cut her off. So anyway, this is a 2006 Toyota Camry. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and pull this engine out, and we got a engine here. I believe it's got 100,000 miles on it. I believe 118,000. I believe so. Have to look at the paperwork again. But it's way less miles than this one's got. Like I say, this one's got 241,000, and so we're gonna get this old ticker train out of there. Smoked up the shop, so let's see what restart. I had trouble starting it at first. I thought it had jump time. Oh, she cranked right back up. 241,000. So at least the fuel pump works. How much gas in it? It's got some gas in it. So while film curves, please do not roll down or wash window for 3 to 5 days. So this is here because this window, something was wrong with the track, and he said don't roll it down. So you got tape on it, so we're not gonna touch it. I guess he put that on there so I won't touch it. So anyway, let's get this 240 some thousand mile 4-cylinder VVTi 16 valve engine out. So that will make it is a 2.4. So let's get this 2.4 out. Let's get this other engine in, and we'll get this on the road. Like I said, this thing will last as long as the grandson keeps an eye on everything. It'll last a couple more years. These Toyotas are known to go at least 300,000 or more if they're taken care of. But like I say, this one here, I don't know if the oil pump went out or it had an oil leak and it just leaked the oil out. But he said the oil light came on, so it could have just got low on oil. Looked like it's got some valve cover leakage. Let's see. Sure, they put some oil in it. That oil looks black. It's probably just time for it to go. I mean, the oil light's not on now, so if it was an oil pump, the oil light will be on right now if the oil pump wasn't pumping anything. So it probably just got an oil leak, or it just ran low on oil and they put some more oil in it when it started knocking. I mean, car don't look bad. I mean, these cars here, they still sell high. These old Toyota Camrys. I mean, black in color. I don't think I see major wrong with it. Is it's just got a dent. Well, not a dent, but the front bumper is cracked. That's probably from hitting driveways too fast. Oh, got a little ding here. But that's not, I don't know if you can see that in the light. I mean in the camera. That's not bad. I don't think this is the LE. Is this a LE edition? LXE. No sunroof. It's got some scratches. But like I said, this car, put an engine in it, fixed this front bumper. It's still $4,500 car all day long. You still bring good money. Clean it up good under the hood. Interior, this is the XLE, so it's got the little wood grain package. Seats look good. Those cigarette burns or tires. So this car can bring a good, fix the window, good $4,500 car, I believe. So anyway, I'm gonna stop yapping. I'm gonna start getting things ready to get this engine out and get this thing back running. So just hang tight. So here's the engine we're going to install into the Toyota. Junkyards don't be too kind to these things when they pull them out. They did leave the harness, but of course they cut it right at the firewall, which really you can just go in the glove box and unplug it, and they just right through the converter that goes on the manifold, so we'll have to use the old one. Got a couple of cut hoses. So what I'm gonna do before I get the engine out, I'm going to go ahead and strip this one down. Of course, we know we got to pull the harness off and everything, and then that way, once we get the new engine out and on the ground, we can just transfer the stuff over. The way I like to pull these engines, and the way I used to do it back in the day, this harness here actually goes into the car, and the computer is actually in the glove box. So you got a choice to go inside, unplug the harness from the computer, pull it out through there, and you can go over to the fuse box and unplug on this side, and then you can actually unplug stuff on the transmission and leave the harness on the engine and just pull it out with the harness. Or you can do it that way, or you can just go through and unplug every single plug and just try and tuck the harness out of the way without having to go inside and unplug it from the ECU. But I don't know which way I'm gonna go with it yet. I probably just unplug everything, kind of tuck the harness back. I don't know if I feel like going in there and unhooking all those plugs and stuff up on the dashboard. I think you have to pull the dashboard out, but if I do, I'll show you it. But like I say, I'm going to go ahead, start removing all this damaged stuff like the power steering pump. I'm just going to pull it off. Well, I could leave it on there, there's nothing wrong with it. I'll probably just pull this hose off. Probably just leave the power steering pump on there. Maybe I can just put the hose back on there and get all this cut up stuff off of here and get it ready. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing stripped down, and then we'll snatch the hood off the car and we'll get to working on the car. So looking at the engine from the back side where the manifold is, on these the harness runs behind the intake manifold. You can see this little junction box right here, and it runs behind there, so you got to pull the intake manifold off. So that's why I used to always just unplug the harness from inside the car and then unplug it from the fuse box, and then you won't have to try and get down in there and take the manifold off just to get that harness out. That'll be the easiest way to do it, because see, it comes all the way around here. So you gotta pull the manifold off, the intake manifold, to get that harness out. So I'm gonna go ahead and snatch the intake and stuff off, and once I get it off, you'll see the harness back there. Well, got the intake off, and as I was saying, this harness here runs right behind it, and it's looks like it's bolted to the block. It's got like a bracket behind here. Some kind of installation you can pull off, like something behind there. So you can pull that off, and there's a bracket with a 10mm. We've got a couple 10s on that side, so we can take that off. I don't know why they put the harness up under, behind the intake like that. You ever had to pull the engine, you gotta take the intake off just to get the harness. That's why I say I always just leave the harness on the motor on these Toyotas and just pull the harness off with it, so that way you won't have to take off on the car. But it's got a sensor right here. It bolts to the block. Got that bracket there. Bolts right there. Looks like bolts on the side. Everything's 10s and 12s. So got a couple 10s up here. Harness right here on the side. Got a 12 up under there. It's got all kind of bolts. The power steering pump's got a harness on it. There's a 12 right there. So there's the part of your harness there. It's loose. So you just got a couple bolts, go all the way across. And this sensor, and then there's some ground wires that grounds the harness. You have to let it down because the chain has got it hung up over here. But you got a couple of sensors right up in here. You got all your temperature sensors. You got an oxygen sensor plug, which this one's cut. Got a couple plugs here. I think this is the cam sensor, I believe. It plugs up. Man, that sucker's on tight. That heat really melts them plugs on there. See, can I squeeze it? Yeah, there we go. So I'm gonna have to let it down, take the chain off of it. But it's pretty simple once you get the intake manifold off. Like I say, you got all these sensors right here. You're unplug. And then your coil pack harness is up here, which there's 110 there. And right up in here, there's like a 10mm that holds the rest of the harness. So then you just move around to the front. But here's the manifold. It's just one big plastic gunk. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and strip the rest of this engine down, and like I said, we'll move on to the car. I just wanted to show that you have to pull the intake off. If you're gonna do it in the car, it's real tight back here. So trying to get that intake off with it in the car, you're gonna be at the top. There's some bolts way at the bottom. You're gonna have to jack it up. That's why I say it'd be best just to leave that harness on there and just pull it out with the harness. I'll show you guys. I think that's the direction I'm going anyway. Okay, so we got the hood off, and the first thing I did was go inside and unhook the harness that connects to the ECU, because like I said, I'm gonna leave the harness on the engine. It's just these 4 plugs. Well, one of them's a dummy plug. No, all of them are plugs. So it's actually 5 plugs. So you got 3 here, and you got 2 to go into the ECU. And this harness right here, if you undo these 2 10mm nuts, you can just pull this harness out of the hole, and then it comes right out of there. Hold up. So this is this end of the harness, and everything else is still on the engine. I think there might be some ground cables. No, these ground cables here go up to the front, so you don't have to worry about those, because it's 2 separate harnesses. And then what we'll do is come over here to the fuse box, and this harness right here, we'll just undo this harness, and I think it's some more harnesses up under there, but mainly it's these and the ones that go to the transmission, which I'll show you. It's got a couple of sensors on there. But once you disconnect it on this side, you disconnect it on that side, you can basically pull this engine out with the wire harness on it. I mean, you can leave the alternator on it. You still got to take the compressor off, unless you're going to let your Freon out. I normally just let the compressor just hang down there, but you can take the alternator off. You got to take it off anyway to put it on the new engine. So power steering's at the rear, I believe, so that's going to be a booger, but you can get it from the bottom. But for your air filter, which I've already unplugged some of the plugs. This is part of the harness too, for your map. You pull all the air filter stuff off. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull all that off. I'll get it down to just the harness. I mean, everything else is basically just hoses and stuff like that. This is I believe, drive-by-wire, so you don't have to worry about a throttle cable. So mainly, you just stripping it down, get everything unhooked, drain the coolant. But I'll try and go through that. I don't want this to be a lengthy thing. I mean, if you're mechanically inclined and you know a little bit about doing engine jobs, then you pretty much know the procedures. But for somebody that's just starting, I'll try and be more detailed with what's going on. I know it's probably plenty videos out there on these things, but one little detail somebody leave out can be helpful to someone watching somebody else's video, and they have went through the process a little different. So I'm gonna go ahead and start stripping some more stuff down, and we'll get it down, and I'll show you how that wire harness comes unhooked, and we'll get this thing out of here. Alright, so I'm going to disconnect the harness from this fuse box. It's got just a few connectors. There's a 10mm nut that holds this cable here. And what we'll have to do is take the fuse box out of the car, flip it over, and unplug the connections at the bottom. got the air cleaner out, and I got the battery plate. The plate that holds the battery, I got it out. Because you gotta unplug stuff off the transmission. Just a couple plugs. So it should. Out of this file right here. It's a clip. You should be able to. It's just this harness right here that plugs to the bottom of the fuse box. I think. Seems like this fuse box separates. There it is. Might could just it's been a while since I messed with these. The plug-in is actually up under the fuse panel, so we'll have to get that out of there. There's a couple of tabs. It's kind of shoved in there pretty good. Got one corner out. There's another corner. If you're looking down in here, there's some little tabs you got to push back on. I actually think you don't have to disconnect it from the bigger part of the box, but got it out anyway. Alright, so we got that out. Pull this up, it's just a couple plugs. There's 1, 2. So that's completely disconnected. We got the positive cable, which is coming from the starter, which you can leave the starter still connected. I think you can leave the starter connected to the transmission, if I'm not mistaken. I think some of these you have to go in and through the starter hole to get the torque converter bolts, but I don't think on this one. But anyway, you got your connector here. This looks like some cables. So that's disconnected from the fuse box. There's a ground wire. That's your mass airflow plug. And just got a couple plugs over here on the transmission. Get you guys set up. It's really not bad. Like I say, it's better than taking the intake off in the car and fighting with it. I had to get the harness off the back of the engine because it's quite a task working behind the motor, especially since it's so close to the firewall. But like I say, I think you can leave the starter in the transmission. I think there's an access plate up under the bottom where you get to the torque converter bolts. But mainly you just gotta disconnect all these plugs right here on the transmission, because this is all one harness. You got these here. That just lifts right off. And this right here, you have to get some pliers and squeeze that. And then you got some plugs down here on the front of the transmission. You probably can take this off. I think you can access closer. I think it's just your safety neutral switch. And then there's a plug right there. Just those 3 plugs. There's one right here. So basically, all this will be unplugged. You can just take your harness and just kind of lay it on top of the engine. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all that stuff undone and show you guys that. Alright, so we got a lot unhooked. We got the wire harness completely undone here. Got it undone from the transmission. I had to take this little water bottle out that was here, the reservoir bottle, to get to these 2 plugs. So the harness is completely undone. We got the fuel line undone. I just undid it from the pressure regulator from the fuel rail because I couldn't get this quick disconnect to come off. I got the tools, but I couldn't get it to come off. We got the heater hoses undone. Got them tucked right here out the way. Got the coolant drained. There's a drain on the bottom of the radiator down there sticking out. And also there's a drain on the block right here behind the compressor. You see it sticking out. It's a drain, 10 millimeter. You can open that up and drain the block. So we got basically everything on this side undone. So now we're just gonna move on to the front of the engine, the exhaust, and we're gonna move over here to the alternator, the compressor, and the power steering. And then also we're gonna go ahead and undo our bell housing bolts. There's a couple bell housing bolts up on here. I'm gonna leave a couple of them in there and just kind of finger tight so the engine won't fall out when I undo the bottoms. I think I can leave the starter in there. Those are 17 millimeter, I believe, so we can take out, there's one there, 1, 2, 3 right here, right there, and then there's one, I think 14 millimeter behind this mount right here, this engine mount. I don't think it's none on the back side. Well, there's one down here. I don't know if you can see it. It's right down up under the harness, like right with my finger. There's a 17 there. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some of that stuff loosened up. Like I said, we'll move on to the exhaust next. I'm probably just gonna take the whole exhaust manifold off because we got to put it on the other engine anyway. It's got the converter built in it, and you just remove this shield and then all those bolts, and then there's a flange set up down there for the pipe going up under the car. Then we'll move on to this side and get this thing in the air and see what we got to tackle up under there. Got this thing in the air and getting ready to remove this exhaust manifold. Like I said, it's got the converter built onto it. We got all the bell housing bolts loose. There's one right here behind this bracket. You can actually leave this motor mount bracket and this mount hooked up, but you have to kind of go behind these tubes right here with a long extension with a 9/16 or a 14 socket. And I just temporarily got them two in there. I got the one on the back side back there out on the bell housing. I don't know if you can see it. It's one way back there. I went ahead and took the throttle body off so I can get back there. I took out the electric fans so I won't damage them coming out with the engine, and have a little bit more room, because you got to come forward a little bit. Got the wheel off. This thing has got a belt tensioner on it. That's the shock for it right there, and I'll show you on the engine over here. It's got like a spring-loaded little shock deal for the belt tensioner. And what you have to do is put your ratchet on there like so, and you push down, and that's how you put the belt on there. Well, these shocks are bad about freezing up. I guess they get water in them or whatever. They won't budge, and it won't let you push it down, and that's the problem we got over here. I can put this ratchet, let's see where we at, put it on there, and it won't move at all. You should be able to see that shock push in, and I'm pushing in on it. So what I'm gonna have to do is just take this nut loose and just take the shock loose and just let it spring back without the shock hooked up. I've ran into this before where that shock it just freezes up and you can't take the belt off. So if you run into that problem, I would suggest go ahead, if your new engine didn't come with a tensioner on it, even if the tensioner on your new engine is frozen, I suggest you go ahead and, I think you can buy this by itself, the little shock, because this is just a bolt that it swivels, this plate swivels on. So I think you can just buy that. I don't remember. But if not, you have to buy the whole tensioner. It's got the pulley. But we're going to leave that on there because we know that one works. And I'll just take this nut loose right here. And it should let that shock swing out some. If not, I'm trying to remember. I know it'll be hard to get this one out because it's up between the car. Worst case scenario, I might have to just cut the belt, which this belt has got a funny looking groove that's in it all the way around. Don't really want to do that. You might can get to that bolt up there with a ratchet wrench. I think you can get to it with a socket and just take that shock off, and then that'll let that plate swivel and the belt come off, because you got to get the belt off. So either way I do it, I'll show you. Pretty simple. Once you get the belt off, you take the alternator off, and you got to get to this one bolt for the manifold anyway, and you can take the compressor, just let it swing down unless you just want to take it completely off and drain your Freon out. And then you go at the bottom. This thing's got the intermediate shaft for the CV axle. It's got those two bolts right there. Let's see. Get in here and point at them. It's got those two bolts. One on the outside, one on the other side. You can take that whole bracket off. And then of course you gotta take your axle nut off and pull your axle out. You actually can leave that CV shaft on there and just let it roll back, but it's kind of a pain to get the bracket back up on the back of the engine, because it has like a dowel pin back there, and it's got to line up. You don't really have to pull the axle. I mean, you just have to see for yourself. But you got to take those bolts loose because that bolts straight to the back of the motor. And but I also, whatever way I decide to do it, I'll show you anyway. And then you got a couple bell housing bolts, and then you got the torque converter bolt. It should have an inspection cover. That's the little rubber inspection cover here. You should be able to just pop that out. And you can get to you can see one of them. I think those are 14s. I think it's 6 of them. So you got your torque converter bolts there. And I already got the flange loose for the exhaust. There's a bracket here, some 12 millimeter bolts. One there and I think one there. Drop that, your flange drops. And here's your other bell housing bolts. Go ahead and bust those loose. And yeah, you'll be able to yank her right out. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get this belt off so I can get the power steering pump off and alternator. And I'm also gonna try and let the power steering pump just hang back there, because without having to pull it off with the engine or have power steering fluid everywhere. So this one's got a pump on it. So if I can just leave it on there, it'll be good. If not, you have to go through here with a 14 millimeter socket. Take that bolt loose, and you can leave it in there and just. It's got an opening. I think. Well, I think you have to pull that bolt all the way out. And then there's another bolt down here at the bottom. In here. Then you can pull the pump off. We'll have to remove this because it got cut. But I'm gonna move along with it, try and get this thing out and get that engine in. So I took the nut off of that stud and I loosened the bolt up there on the tensioner, which is right up in there, and it still wouldn't come loose, so had to end up just taking this stud out. You can use a 7 millimeter quarter socket and bag that out after you take the bolt loose. This should come out of there. Oops, I went the light. It still didn't come out. Gotta get the light back. The stud is loose, but that tensioner is still come right in there and back up. I think it's still in the threads. Which it should be out of there. But still, that tensioner is not moving to let that belt loose. I'm gonna have to get some pliers on there with some vice grips and try and get that out. So after wrestling with it, finally got the stud out. You pull this stud out of there, and that tensioner will come loose. You see the belt's loose. So it's got a long hole, like deep hole that stud goes in. So I had to put some vice grips on it. So here comes the belt. Belt is off. Like I said, we're putting the other tensioner on because that one's no good. Well, we're gonna leave it on the motor anyway. So now it's time to take the alternator off, and compressor, and power steering pump, and you know. So we got the alternator off. Funny thing is, the tab that holds the bottom part of the alternator was already broken off. So I don't know if somebody broke it when they put this alternator on, because that is a aftermarket alternator. I just took the top bolt loose and the alternator just fell off. But it's supposed to have this tab here. And got the manifold off. Exhaust. Found out this bolt here backs up against this air conditioning line, and the only way you can get it loose, you have to just take all the other ones loose. I had to put some vice grips on it because I couldn't get a wrench to bite it, and just have to turn it out and move the compressor out at the same time till you get it off. So this will be the first bolt you put on when you put the compressor back on. Now if you're gonna drain your Freon out, then you can take that line off the compressor and easily get to it, but I don't want to have to go through having to recharge the system, so I'm just gonna take it off this way. That screw is long. Just gonna take it off that way the compressor stays full. I'm gonna tuck it back. I'll probably take this bottom radiator hose off, tuck the compressor back so it won't be in the way. So the next step is getting there's a mount over here on the side. Right here, I'm gonna take this tab off. This is the other motor mount. And as you see on the engine over here, this will stop you from coming out. So I'm gonna take them two bolts out, and that way when you get ready to pull the motor up, it won't catch the body. And then, but first, well, that'll be last. The next step will be to get this axle out of here, to get that shaft out like I was saying. And then we'll hook a chain onto it with the engine lift after we do the torque converter bolts and take that off. It should be free. Just got this one little wishbone mount up here, which does nothing, but it keeps the motor from rocking forward and backwards. And I took the thermostat housing off because it was going to probably be in the way. And as you see, that one's broke. So kind of a long, lengthy job. I mean, you might find somebody else do it different, but this is the way I do it. Try and get engine out without breaking stuff and spending a lot of time on unhooking the wiring and stuff like that. So, all right, up under this thing, I disconnected. It's 3 bolts that holds this intermediate shaft bracket onto the engine, and I kind of got it pried away a little bit. It's like a dowel pin that sticks through it. So I'm not going to pull the whole axle out. I took this little clip loose that holds all this into the bracket. That way, this is supposed to slide. When you slide you can slide the whole axle through it, and it's like a bearing in there, and it's got a bolt here that keeps it from spinning. So I was trying to knock it forward to get it off of that little dowel pin, but I got it pried away just enough so if we pull the engine out, it should come past it. I got all the bell housing bolts loose. You can see the engine starting to split. Torque converter bolts is up in side of here. I don't know if you can see it hard. That's why I didn't have the camera under here where my hand is. But you can go over the pipe into this little window right here. It's 6 torque converter bolts, and they are tight. They're like Loctited on. They're 14 millimeter. Got the exhaust undone from the body so I can get over the top of it to get to the torque converter bolts. The last thing to do is the power steering. I'm gonna leave the pump on there. I'm just gonna take that hose off that's on top of it, and it's just gonna have to just spill out. I'm gonna pull it out with the pump on. I'm not even gonna, it's so tight over in there, it's hard to get that pump off the motor. So we're gonna pull it like they did the junkyard one, and she should be ready to come out. Everything else is unhooked except for this bracket here, which I'll take this, when I get the chain hooked up, I'll take that loose, because I still got to get this motor mount over here loose. It's just 2 bolts on that bracket, and I'm going to take the mount off, and she should be ready to come out. So I'm going to get things set up and get ready to pull this thing out of here. You know, when you see a cherry picker or engine hoist or engine lift or whatever you call them, whatever you want to call them, it's time to do some pulling. So engine's hooked up. I went ahead and undid that power steering hose. I had to use this long extension with a swivel 11/16 to get down there. You can see the power steering, top of the pump. Disconnect that hose coming from the rack, and it just drained the fluid out of the reservoir. So I disconnected this hose here from the reservoir, and just threw it on top of the engine because the pump's coming with it. So now it's time to lift this thing up out of here. Like I say, when I get it up in the air just a little bit, I'm gonna go ahead and take this bracket off. I can't get it off because one of the bolts is behind the mount. So I'm gonna lift it up some, probably get it up to where that tab is on the body right there, and then I'll undo that bolt, the 3 bolts that holds it. I could just undo that top one now. I could just take the mount off, and that'll make it a lot easier. Still have to come straight up that stud, and it kind of just wiggle around. So I might just take that mount off right quick. I think it's 3 bolts, and then when we lift it up, the mount will just fall out, and then make it easier to get to those bolts going through the bracket. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all that loose, and then we'll lift it up. Going up time. Let's see, can we get this thing out of here without breaking anything? She's in here tight. Let's get a pry bar. Make sure I got all the bolts out. Got one bolt. Got one bolt. Hang it up. Go barrel out. Man, they are glued together. Trying to find a flathead screwdriver I can wedge down in there. Guess when you do so many engines, you start knowing what you need right off the bat. Now we got the try and get you guys in there, but it's kind of awkward. Because once I start lifting, it's going to leave the view of the camera. So pry this engine from the transmission. Looks like it's going to tilt back. Aha! Let's make sure our axle didn't pop out on the back side. Shouldn't have. Oh no, she's clear. She is clear. Now I just got to get it up so I can get that bracket I was showing you loose. There she goes. I like that sound. Coming on up there now. Should have put a jack up under the transmission, but I think because it's got a valve on the front and the back, it should stay. Okay, now I gotta get this mount out and get these 3 bolts off for that bracket. That'll take me a minute. Just bear with me. I'm gonna let it down just a little bit. It's a tight fit. I think I laid it down good enough. Got too happy letting it up because that was blocking the one bolt. See if I can let that down a little bit. I think I can get there. We get my 14. Socket, and I should have had all that set up. So I removed this, like I was showing that motor mount bracket. It sticks out so far, it'll hit the frame when you're trying to come out. I don't know why they put a mount on that side. Usually, it's just how I want it to top. Come on to mama, or daddy, or sister, or brother, or papa. Just coming out. You want to make sure all your wire harnesses is not hanging up. You don't want to rip no plugs. Make sure you don't have no hoses or nothing catching. It's a lengthy process doing these little Toyota engines. Because thing about Toyota and Nissan, they don't spare not to put bolts in. They'll have 100 bolts holding the engine in, and they'll have them torque to spec. And all of them are metric, so you spend more time on bolting stuff. 10s and 17s and 14s. And one thing you want to look out for whenever you dealing with these engines is the dowel pins. As you see, you got a dowel pin here and here. Sometimes these are sticking to the transmission, and you pull the engine out and they'll be in the transmission. Then you get ready to put your new engine in, the dowel pin will be in the engine like this. And you're like, why the engine won't bolt up to the transmission? Look up under there, you got two dowel pins hitting each other. Then you gotta pull it back out, either take some pliers and get them out the transmission, or take some pliers and get them out the engine. I have done that. So you wanna make sure, if your dowel pins came out in the engine, make sure they're in the engine, your new engine. And if they stayed in the transmission, you can get them out the engine and then just put it in that way. But they'll mess you up. They'll have you thinking something's wrong, and it's just the dowel pin. So it's out. Goodness. So the next thing to do is get it on the ground. Ooh, almost hitting the ceiling. Get it on the ground, get the intake off, get the wire harness off, and all the stuff we're going to put on the other engine. Like I said, that one's completely stripped down. So we got to put the wire harness, intake. We're going to use that power steering pump because it's already on there. And really that's it, wire harness, intake, and it'll be ready to go back in. So there's our old transmission hanging in there. So anyway, that's gonna be it for tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and set this thing down, and I'm thinking about pushing it outside, let it down, push it outside, and pressure wash the engine bay because it is greasy. I mean, it's showing 241,000 miles. Thinking about it, we got some rain supposed to be coming tomorrow, which today is Saturday, so calling for rain tomorrow. So if it's not raining in the morning, I might push it outside, soak it down with some oven cleaner, and get some of this grease and dirt off an old antifreeze, and then push it back in. And while it's drip drying, I can be swapping everything over. So just hang tight, and we'll see you tomorrow. So it's time to put the new engine in. I got everything swapped over, the harness, intake. I had to end up changing the balancer. This was the one on the new engine, and you see it's about to come apart. All the rubber is broke loose on the front and the back. So we took the one off the old engine and swapped it over to here. It's in way better shape. So the old knocking engine is now ready to be scrapped. I think it's still got a good head on it, cylinder head. Somebody might need it, I don't know, but I think he said he wanted the old motor back. I don't know why, but maybe we'll pull the oil pan off up and check it, maybe not, just to see what was actually knocking. I don't know. That's if he don't want it back. If he does, I'm not gonna worry about it. But anyway, we're all set up. We got it ready. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop this back in there. I got this thing outside and pressure washed up under here. Cleaned off all that old grease and stuff. Spilled antifreeze. So now it's a clean work area. This thing here, I'm gonna have to try and keep it fold back so it won't be in the way of the engine. If you drop the engine in there and it's like that, it won't be touching. I mean, you won't be able to flip it up so it can bolt to the motor. So that was the downfall about leaving the axle in there. I just didn't feel like pulling the axle out and getting transmission fluid everywhere. And so what I'm gonna do is just get the engine halfway in, and I guess I'll just go up under there and flip it. Hopefully it'll kind of sit behind the engine block until I get it made it up to the transmission. Got a jack holding the transmission up because it was kind of like on an angle after I got the engine out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get things set up, and we'll get it back in there. Alright, so the trouble I was having was to get the little intermediate shaft bracket flipped around where it's going to go back against the block, and I had to come over here and put this bracket back on, and you see the mount's not lined up with it. So I had to put the bracket back on first, and then I had to get that mount back in the frame where I can line this up. It's not easy. It's gonna leave the motor loose a little bit. I should be able to pry up on that. Need that stud to go back in the bracket. I don't want to get my finger caught in there. That would suck. Just gotta move over just a tad bit. It's almost there. go. Now when I get the engine lined up with the bell housing, should just sit right down. I got a bolt, sorry about that. I got a bolt started, one of the bell housing bolts started. Well, it's just sitting in the bell housing. I just got to thread it up to the engine. It's kind of hard doing some of these engine jobs and filming by yourself. Now we just got to line the engine up. There. I think I got to let the transmission or the engine down just a hair. Make sure my mount will disappear on me. Still sitting in there. Cut this air conditioner off. It's got kind of warm today. That'll be better. Let's see, can I let it down? Oh, that was the mount. Woo, that almost got my hand. That almost got me. All right, we ought to be able to get this bolt threaded. This little engine's a booger to put back in. Let me go double check. Make sure everything's all right. Yep. We get a 17 socket. I don't know what I did with it. Or 11/16, either one. So I got a thread. If I can just get this bolt here started, I think I need to let down on the transmission just a little bit. We kind of, actually the jack is not even holding it anymore. We're kind of off a little bit. We're way off. The engine needs to roll forward or roll backwards. Get the down pin lined up. There we go. Almost had it. So can I lean back on the chain? If I get this one screw started, started. Those fine thread bolts. Let's see. It's like it wants to roll away from it. Get in the dowel pin. It just don't want to get in that dowel pin. Woo! Thing's a booger. I can just get it. I'm scared to hit it with an impact because I don't want to cross thread it. Sit right there. Those fine thread bolts, really easy to cross thread. Alright, it started. Now I just got to get this dowel pin to line up. That's my problem. Let me let the engine down just a little bit. It should roll backwards. Should still lined up. Everything else is good. There. Now she's up there. Need 3 hands. Now we should be able to. Right up there. I gotta let the engine down a little bit. Should be able to. For some reason we still got a gap. Oop. So, still got a gap down here at the bottom. For some reason. Loosen that. I know it's not a dowel pin in there. I think I need to jack up. Nope, that's gonna bring it away. Oh. Oh, it went in then. Oh, still sitting on the mount. It's like the tip of that stud was hanging up. Now we should be able to there we go. Now she's there. It would have been easier if I didn't leave the axle in it, but like I said, I didn't want to go through the hassle of pulling that axle out and getting transmission fluid everywhere. Have to top off the transmission and then pulling the whole front suspension down on this side, like the strut and spindle. But as you can see, the stud's sticking through the mount, and back here that axle bracket is right against the block. I just got to line it up with the dowel pin and put the screw in it. I hope you can see that. It's kind of hard working on some of these projects like this because you have to get the camera at certain angles. But you see the bracket where the axle is. You can barely see the bolt hole in the block. So I just got to line that up, stick a bolt in. But other than that, she's in. So it's basically the same process as you take it out. You just start hooking stuff back up. And you know, get your exhausts and wire harness and everything bolted back up, and top it off with coolant once you get all that hooked up. If you're doing some spark plugs, pop them in. You know the routine. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all this stuff buttoned up on it, and then when I get ready to crank it, y'all be the first to hear it run. So I started putting the compressor back on. Like I was saying about this screw here, in order to get it out, you got to take this your AC line off. That got something to do with draining your refrigerant out. But if you just take all the other bolts loose first, you can just get your wrench and just slowly take it loose and just back it up until the compressor backs off. And then when you put it back on, I got the other screws just barely started. You can just take your fingers and start it in. Now I had to take some vice grips and clamp on it to get it loose because it was really tight. But that way you don't have to drain your Freon out. Not unless you want to take the compressor off, or if you're scared it might be in the way, or you know, you want to just refuel your AC unit with refrigerant. But see, it's tight. I just got to take the wrench, tighten it up, finish tightening it. And we got some stuff at the bottom hooked up. The torque converter bolts, the axle, immediate shaft bracket, the motor mounts. So now I just got to put the belt on it. Well, I got to put the alternator on it first. I'm going to go ahead and put the exhaust manifold on it and go up under there and hook it back to the flange. And then we'll get the alternator on it. And that way I can put the belt on. It's easy to put the belt on it up here where I was in the air, because you can make sure it stays on the crankshaft pulley. And like I was saying about that tensioner, we know that one works good. So it'll be easy to get the belt on. Then we got to run our harness back through the firewall, back through the hole. I got it blocked off because when I pressure washed it, didn't want water to get inside of there. Got all the bell housing bolts except for 2. I got to get them in. I got to put the thermostat housing on because the other one was broke that came on this motor. So I'm going to go ahead and get started hooking all this stuff up, and so we can fire this thing up. So I got everything hooked up. I haven't tried to crank it yet. I'm going to spin it over. I got the coil packs unplugged. I'm going to spin it over so the oil pressure can build up. This engine's been sitting for a while with no oil in it. So I want to get the oil pressure built up, let it circulate through a couple times. I've already put coolant in it. Just kind of poured it in there, and then we'll finish topping it off. But I just want to manually spin it over and make sure all the electronics are still working. And then we'll hook the coil packs back up. It'll also prime the fuel system too. So, what did I do with the key? Alright, let's hook the coil packs up and see what we got. Spins over pretty good. Didn't hear any major noises or nothing. I can smell the fuel, so it's probably flooded a little bit, but I just wanted to prime it up. All right, here we go. Computers will have to adjust. Oh, yeah, that's good. I'm actually going to let the vacuum booster on for your brakes. I was like, oh, wait a minute, they don't sound like the fuel adjustment. But I heard the vacuum. I left that hose off back there. Sounds good though. Make sure there's no engine light though. See how that real look. Turn the heat on. Start to get warm. Check our coolant. I hate spilling coolant everywhere, but gotta do what you gotta do. Let it sit there for a second. I'm gonna top off the tire steering fluid. Hopefully I got some. No, this is not Lipton iced tea. It's actually tire steering fluid. The bottle had got a hole in it. I had to pour it in something. It does look like iced tea though. You don't want to drink that by accident, be sick. Put that back in the cabinet. So far, sounds good. There's no leaks up under it. There wasn't no little rattling sound when it first cranked, but that's just because oil still had to circulate. Not bad, not bad. Oh, need to do that. Just go through it. Guess you can't pull the top off of these water car, right? Test drive. Well, she seems to be cruising pretty good. The check engine light was on because I had turned it over without the coil packs hooked up, the ignition coils, and it had a code for primary ignition coil circuit disconnected. So I cleared that out. There's no lights on right now. The engine runs really good, really smooth. So this car lived to see probably another 200,000 miles if it's taken care of. Dog ran across the road. Really? Creatures of the night. So we're gonna make a good block with it, watch the temperature and any check engine light. It's got a little pep to it. little air seepage. That's because the window's not rolled all the way up. Something wrong with it. I think he said it's off the track. It got some tape holding it up, but that's something he can deal with. Unless he wants it fixed, we can fix it, but I think he's not just too much worried about it. He's gonna give it to his I think his granddaughter as a first car, so maybe he'll fix it later. Like I say, temperature staying normal. There's no check engine light. Sitting here idling smooth. It's got good power. Transmission shifts out good. I've never really heard of a Toyota with a bad transmission. Usually the engines. Toyota usually have some good transmissions. I've never had to swap one out. I've always had to swap out engines. It's running real smooth, real good. Heat works. So that being said, we're going to take it on home and probably drive it again tomorrow, check it for leaks after it cool off, and it'll be ready to go back to the original owner. So anyway, that's going to be it on the old Toyota Camry. So thank you guys for watching, and hopefully this helps somebody out on doing an engine swap. I know there's probably tons of videos of it, but like I said in the beginning, that one little thing can be left out of a video, and I might cover it, somebody else might not. So anyway, that's gonna be it. So we'll holler at y'all later. Anything else pops up with it, you'll be the first to know. So, sitting here purring like a kitten, just quiet. Oh yeah. She lives to see another day, or another 200,000 miles. So, again, thanks for watching.